Hello and welcome to the program. I am Shola Sheeli. The 2019 Corruption Perceptions Index released globally by Transparency International reveals that Nigeria has further slipped down in the perception of corruption. Nigeria is ranked 146 out of 180 countries assessed. We were ranked 144 in 2018. The rankings indicate that the anti-corruption war is failing to deliver results, that political corruption is still high, there's a lack of rule of law, weak institutions, and it generally scored the government low in the fight against graft. Now, what do lawyers make of this rating? I have the views of some of them up next.
It's been visible, the fight against corruption. Some might say it's lopsided. But tell me which amongst the ones that have been dealt with did not do anything. So that's the willingness to face it. But more importantly, it has to go to the small places, the offices, the institutions and all of that. It's been fought at the high level, governors and all of that. We haven't seen it so well. You still go to the ministry and you still have to give money to move your files. You still need to get to somewhere and you still need to do what they have to do there before. So in our everyday lives, it's still there. So that is the key one. If it doesn't get to that point, we can't all be governors, we can't all be out there. People will even tell you the president is vice and probably one other person are the ones fighting corruption, every other person. So if we all know that, then efforts should be made to bring it to the lower echelons of the society to see that each and every one will see a reason to change in the way we look at things. It's a mentality. It's on the average. A foreigner will come in here and tell you it's the same thing. The foreigner might not get to the governor tomorrow. But between me and you, what he does until he leaves, he still sees that he still has to do some things before he gets some things done. And he will need to know that he can get away with anything, provided you have some money. I mean, right from what happens on the roads. A governor had to shout that these soldiers on the road are taking money from people. Everybody knows that. I have many on my phone. You take the pictures, they're there. And we all drive and go away, and we leave the commuters there. It starts from all of that.
I also believe in their rating. The truth is, corruption has been endemic in this system. It's also as huge as the international community is making it seem. I also do not think that it's something that we can deal with overnight. So, yes, it's a big problem that we have in Nigeria. The fight is ongoing. And then, they also have their indices for which they are monitoring. I'm sure the rating dropping must have been as a result of the fundamentals with which they are monitoring. But as a lawyer, and I must tell you the truth, when you sit back and watch the fight against corruption, you are minded to think that, one, it is slow, okay, and it being slow could be for a lot of reasons. Our judicial system is very slow. The judges are overworked. Lawyers themselves, sometimes have reasons to come to court to take adjournment. And then this system that allows you, of course, a defendant has a right to fair hearing and comes to court, he wants to be prepared for the trial. But I also think that even the prosecution, sometimes, not all of them, sometimes they are not prepared when they come to court. They have reasons to take adjournments, and these things linger for too long. So, for instance, in some other crimes, it takes a lot shorter period for in corruption matters to be dispensed with. Whereas here, you have matters that linger for 7 years, 8 years, and these things doesn't. So over there, they are watching us, and it seems as if we are not serious with our fight against corruption.
Corruption was being fought at the first instance, and I believe and I agree with the federal government that corruption has actually eaten deep into the fabric of the existence of this nation, and it will not take a day to fight it. But as the first tenor went by, I didn't see corruption be fought. Why? Those who looted our monies were known. At the time, the government said they know those who looted the money. Statistics were showing. The government at one time also said that the people who looted our money are less than 100 persons. That means the corrupt persons are not unknown to the government of the day. So when an external body comes up to say, oh, you are not fighting corruption, you are encouraging corruption, I think it's supposed to be a review of my own self, if I'm in the government, not to be attacking. And if you observe, the government of the day today, whenever any person criticizes, whether positive or negative, what comes up is to defend. They will not think inward. What are we not doing right? Rather to put ourselves in, they will always find a reason to defend.
The Chairman, Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, Professor Sagay, has also been speaking about the index and other issues. We have his views next.
What capacity do they have to rank anybody about anything? It's just a Western developed institution for putting down developing countries that are doing well, period. All right, look at the word they use, perception. What's the meaning of that? That means you go around the street asking people, what do you think of the corruption program of your government? Is it succeeding? How do you make a judgment on that? That's irresponsible. They can go to EFCC office and get the record of convictions in the last 4 years. They can get the record of recoveries. They can get the record of all the anti-corruption program in which school children, secondary school, university are being involved. They can compare what has been achieved in terms of convictions in the last 4 years, 1,900, including 3 governors, and over 1 trillion naira. They can compare all that to what used to be. All the things that this government has done, which is being unappreciated. It just makes me come to the conclusion that the government shouldn't bother anymore trying to inform people, because there's so much bad faith. All right? Somebody escorts an elephant in front of you, and when you are interviewed, you say, no, I saw a mouse. That's the sort of mentality we have. We have never had a government in which the recovered loot is plowed back for the development and improvement of the quality of life of the most deprived Nigerians. All these programs are there, on television, on stage, everywhere. But some people are still pretend that they don't notice it. Transparency International pretend they don't notice it. So I don't take them seriously. I challenged Transparency International at a conference abroad that I attended. And they admitted that what they were publishing was not authentic. That is just perception. I said, then I asked him, is perception accurate? He said, no, I cannot guarantee it. I said, why waste time? Why don't you go and do empirical work? Doing the real research in the EFCC, ICPC, what are the others now? NAFU, and so on, that are actually doing all the work on corruption in this country. Police, go to the police, go to all of them. They have records. Take their records, and then you can determine what's happening. So I don't take Amnesty International. Transparency International. I always say Amnesty because I also classify them in the same category. Yes. So, you know, I'm not impressed at all. They just show off. They have prestige they don't deserve, and they show off every year with publishing this thing, which some people take seriously. I think they're just jokers.
But Prof, some people would extend the argument further by saying that if there is a war against graft that is really working, it should show in the level of life of the citizenry. And if the citizenry are not saying, you know, giving that impression that they feel it, then perhaps the war is not working.
No, the level of standard of life has nothing to do with the war against corruption. Standard of living has to do with economic development, where you have investment, increased employment, and capital investment, and so on.
But if the money is plowed back, shouldn't that be?
It's not enough to create. In fact, the plowing back now is at the lowest level, not at your level and my level. You're not benefiting from the plowback. The people who are benefiting are those who are earning, who are doing what I would call small-scale businesses, who are getting loans of between 10,000 and 500,000, interest-free loans, or very, very poor families as determined by the United Nations, not even by Nigeria, within Nigeria, because they're the ones actually doing the basic scientific work of determining which are the poorest of the poor families and telling us who to give the 5,000 a month to. Those are the people who are benefiting from this, or the school children who are going to public primary schools, who are having free, nutritious food every day. You won't feel anything. We're building, or this government is building from the very bottom to try and raise them up a little bit. The economic program, when it starts working, eventually, will bring benefits which we will begin to feel. But not now, it's too early, because we are digging ourselves out of a big hole that that this government made in 2015.
Second term, Prof.
Yes.
4 years gone? Too
Yes.
early?
It can take 10 years to get out of that type of mess we're in. Everything had gone. And if this government had not come, I think this country would have collapsed. This is a rescue mission.
How would you react to suggestions from some quarters that the fundamental rights of citizens are not protected under this administration? Most people who will say this will reference disobedience of court orders. Ibrahim El-Zakzaky is still in detention despite court orders that he be released. Thankfully, the government, though it took a while, they've complied with the court orders on former National Security Advisor Sambo Dasuki and even the Revolution Now protest convener Omoyele Sowore. But a lot of people still have issues with, government's non-compliance with court orders.
My reply to that is a question of looking at 3 people out of 200 million. It doesn't make sense. You are enjoying freedom of speech. I am enjoying it. All of us, if you read the newspapers, go to social media and see how foul-mouthed they are. And they're walking free. So that's, we have to think proportionately. I always say, I'm not deep in this government. I'm on the periphery. I don't regard myself as really a full member of the government.
No, you are a presidential advisor.
Yes, but it's not a full-time job, and we have a specific assignment. There are people who are full-time people. So what I'm trying to say really is that I may not be aware of reasons for certain decisions being taken. Why was El-Zakzaky kept for so long? Why was the National
the Revolution Now protests convener?
Not even him.
Sambo Dasuki.
Yes, why was it kept for so long?
Advisor.
There may be some major security reasons which you and I do not know, which we were not informed of. But the number is so small, and Sowore, he's a young man, I admire him, but let's be frank. Nigerians are not frank. The man asked for trouble. When you are calling for revolution, when you are saying you are going to bring everybody out and bring the country to a standstill, when you are saying that if the president does not live peacefully, you will remove him, what are you really asking for? So, he should admit that he really asked for it. Because if you look at the world today, you see demonstrations that have no end. People come out day in, day out as a result of some of these things, creating destabilization. Look at Hong Kong, totally destabilized. So we have to look at all those things and ask ourselves whether our society will not be destabilized and paralyzed by the sort of steps and speeches that people like Sowore were making. So yeah, I think Sowore, to a certain extent, was a risk to the security of the nation, and it's unfortunate he went through what he went through. I sympathize with him. He's a nice young man, but he should show more discretion, particularly having contested the presidency. You believed in the system, you took part, you lost. He should have at least respected that system.